As you continue to edit, you may find yourself needing additional audio tracks or additional video tracks. Let me go ahead and change my view a little bit so you can really see my timeline. We're really not concerned with our source or our program panels at this point, but I want to just illustrate that if tracks are already there, I can just drag a clip and drop it on, and I'm good to go. But what if I need to add another track? Well, there's several very easy ways to do this. If I took any clip and I simply dragged it to the empty space above my uppermost track, Premiere Pro is smart enough to create the track for me and put the clip in that location. And this is true of both video and audio. So if I go ahead and grab an audio track, such as my music, and drag it down to the bottom and let go, it actually adds a track. Now you'll notice that it did not add that track at the very bottom, because at the very bottom is your master audio track, which is a little bit different. It added it where it should have put it, which is directly under the existing track of A5. It created A6. So adding tracks, pretty easy by dragging and dropping, but what if you want to add a track before you bring a clip in for other reasons? Well, you can add them one of a couple ways. You can right-click in this area. Now, this is pretty area specific, because if I right-click over here, I don't get the option to add a track, or if I right-click over here, I don't get the option to add a track, because it's context sensitive. I need to make sure I'm in the right location, and I can simply do one of two things. I can add a single track, or I can add multiple tracks. Now, this is where you really get some power, because it's easy to add a track above everything else, but what if I want to add a track down here? I want to squeeze something in between. Maybe I want a new background track because I'm doing a chroma key. Well, if I right-click on any track, and I'll use the second one because I think that's more illustrative, and I go Add Track, you'll notice that it actually puts that track in above the track that I selected. So I was able to squeeze in a new V3, pushing everything else up. I can also delete a track that way. So if I have an empty track and I want to close down my vertical space, I can right-click and I can also delete a track that way. And finally, if I want to add multiple tracks, I can get to this in a couple of different ways. I could go to my sequence and go down here to add and delete tracks, or if my hand is already on the mouse and I'm already working in my timeline, I can right-click and I can say Add Tracks. And by saying Add Tracks, I get this dialog box, and I can choose how many video tracks I want to add. So if I need to add 3 or 4 tracks, I don't have to do it all at once. And I can also tell it where to put those tracks. So for instance, maybe I need to add a track at the very bottom of my timeline below all my other video tracks. So I can simply say before the first track, and I can do the same thing with my audio tracks. Now, audio tracks are a little bit more complex, and we'll explore that in the audio section of this course, but there are different track types that you can add, but the default is probably where you want to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit Cancel because I want to show you one last way that you might be able to use this dialog box to do a little bit of house cleaning. Let me go ahead and delete these clips that I brought in. We still have those tracks available, and our timeline looks rather cluttered. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and hit the / key so you can see the whole timeline. And what I want to do is just remove all those empty tracks and consolidate vertically my timeline. So I can simply right-click and choose Delete Tracks. I get a similar dialog box to what we saw earlier, and I can check Delete Video and Delete Audio and have it choose all empty tracks. Now, there are some other choices if I wanted to just delete specific tracks, but I'm going to use all empty tracks now, and look how much cleaner my timeline will be. No extra spaces, no extra tracks, clean and efficient.